Every pack has its secrets, and every outcast carries one worth killing for. She was the forgotten one, the Omega no one wanted. Until one stormy night, when fate led her to a cave of dying wolves, and the man whose heartbeat would change her world forever. This is where rejection turned into destiny. Before we continue, comment your location below and let's see how global our story family really is. Chapter 1: The Blood Moon Rejection. The moon hung low and red over Frostvale Pack's clearing, huge as a bleeding heart. Every wolf in the territory had gathered to watch the Blood Moon ceremony, the night when fated mates were revealed by the moon goddess's light. Seren Allery stood in the center of the ring of torches, trembling inside her thin white dress. The wind was sharp, it slipped beneath the fabric and bit at her skin. Around her, people whispered, "That's the pale one. Her eyes glow. Creepy. I heard she cursed her last pack sister just by touching her." Seren kept her chin lifted. She had learned long ago that showing fear only fed their cruelty. Her heart hammered as her supposed fated mate Yarrick Ven, the beater's son, stepped forward. He was tall and broad, his confidence the kind that came from always being wanted. For weeks he had been polite, even gentle. Seren had dared to hope that maybe, finally, the moon goddess had chosen someone who could look past her strange appearance. Elder Thessa raised her staff. Under the blood moon, bonds are revealed. Yarrick Ven, Seren Allery, step closer. The crowd hushed. The moonlight thickened, wrapping the pair in a crimson shimmer. Seren's wolf stirred inside her chest, ready to rise, ready to greet her mate. Then Yarrick's face twisted. He stared at her silver hair and pale violet eyes as if seeing a ghost. "No," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "This can't be right." The murmurs started immediately. Elder Thessa frowned. "The moon goddess makes no mistakes. She has this time." Yarrick backed away. "I will not take a cursed Omega for a mate. Look at her. She looks half dead already." Seren felt the words strike like stones. "Yarrick, please." He cut her off. "Every crop failed the year she was born. My sister caught fever after touching her hand. I won't bring that into my bloodline." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Someone shouted, "Ghost Wolf." Seren turned toward Alpha Charon, who stood beside the dais. "Alpha, please, I've done nothing wrong." The Alpha's expression was cold. "The goddess may test us, but the pack's safety comes first. Yarrick rejects the bond, and I uphold it." "Rejects." The word cracked from her throat. "You can't." "Enough." His voice boomed through the clearing. "By my decree, Seren Allery is banished from Frostvale lands before the next sunrise. If she remains, she will be treated as a trespasser." Gasps echoed. The elder tried to protest, but the Alpha silenced her with a glare. Seren's knees weakened. "Where will I go? The snows will kill me." "That is not my concern," he said. "Perhaps the moon goddess will have mercy on your cursed soul." The torches flickered as if ashamed. For a long heartbeat no one moved. Then Yarrick turned his back and walked away. Seren stood alone in the circle, the blood moon painting her pale skin crimson. The whispers grew louder. "She deserved it. Bad luck follows her. Better she leaves before the storm hits." She swallowed her pride. "If I am cursed," she said softly, "then may the curse be mine alone." No one answered. That night she packed what little she owned, a threadbare cloak, a loaf of hard bread, and a small knife. The snow had already begun to fall, fine and relentless. The world outside the pack walls looked like a white sea. At the gate the guard hesitated. "You shouldn't go now. The blizzard." "I'm already gone," Seren said. She pulled her hood up and stepped into the storm. The cold bit instantly. The wind clawed at her cloak, pushing her back as if trying to erase her from the world. She walked anyway. The trees bent under heavy snow, their branches creaking like voices warning her to turn back. By midnight her fingers had gone numb. The loaf of bread was long gone, eaten just to keep moving. Every step sank into the drifts. She kept her eyes on the faint glow of the blood moon above the clouds, her only guide. Maybe it's better this way, she thought. No one to whisper, no one to hurt. But then another thought followed, small and desperate. I don't want to die. A strange sound carried on the wind, a distant, deep whine. It almost sounded like a wolf in pain. Seren froze. "Hello," she called, but the storm swallowed her voice. The noise came again, faint but insistent. Something inside her stirred, a tug in her chest, warm and guiding. Her wolf lifted its head. "Go that way." She obeyed the pull, stumbling through the snow toward a ridge of dark rock half hidden by swirling flakes. Chapter 2, Whispers of the Cursed Child. The ridge turned into a small cliff face. Snow had piled high against it, hiding everything except a narrow shadowed gap. The strange pull in her chest grew stronger. When she stepped closer, the wind suddenly dropped, as if the storm itself refused to follow her inside. A cave. Seren hesitated. The darkness beyond the entrance looked bottomless. But the choice was simple: cold death outside or whatever waited inside. She ducked in. The air was still and heavy, smelling faintly of stone and blood. Her boots crunched over frozen dirt. Then she heard it, low whimpers, ragged breathing. Her eyes adjusted. A circle of shapes moved faintly in the gloom: wolves, enormous and ghost-pale beneath a dusting of snow. One lifted its head, silver eyes gleamed back at her. Seren's pulse pounded. "Easy," she whispered. "I'm not here to hurt you." The wolf gave a soft, broken growl, more of warning than threat. She could see now that several were wounded, gashes, matted fur, frost on their muzzles. One was barely breathing. "Injured," she murmured. "You poor things." Her first instinct screamed to run. These were not ordinary wolves, they were huge, soldiers by the way they lay in formation even while unconscious. But compassion drowned her fear. She pulled off her cloak and moved closer to the smallest of them, a female with a deep cut on her shoulder. "Sure. It's all right." The wolf didn't move when she touched the fur, just shivered violently. Seren's own hands were shaking from cold, but she forced herself to act. "I need a fire." She looked around. There were bits of dry wood scattered near the back of the cave, remnants of some old camp. A miracle. Her fingers barely worked as she struck her knife against a rock, over and over, until sparks caught on a shred of cloth. When the flame finally bloomed, golden light washed over the wolves. There were 12 in total, each massive, each breathing shallowly. Snow melted from their fur, revealing shades of silver, white, and gray streaked with blood. Seren dragged what branches she could find into a pile and fed the fire until it glowed bright. Heat licked at her frozen skin. The nearest wolf crawled closer to the warmth with a pitiful whine. "That's right," she said softly. "Come closer. You'll be all right." She melted snow in a metal cup she'd found near the fire pit and carried it carefully to the wolves, letting them lick the water from her palms. Each time she touched them, that same warmth stirred in her chest, an energy like sunlight trapped in her veins. Hours passed. The blizzard screamed outside, but inside the cave the fire crackled, steady and alive. Seren cleaned wounds with melted snow and scraps torn from her dress. She talked to keep herself awake. "My name's Seren," she said to no one in particular. "I was banished tonight. Seems like we all had a bad day." One of the wolves, bigger than the rest, fur white as frost, opened his eyes. They were the palest blue she had ever seen. He didn't move, just stared at her with something that felt intelligent. "You're their leader, aren't you?" she whispered. "You should rest." The big wolf made a low sound in his throat, not quite a growl. When she reached to check the gash along his ribs, he didn't pull away. "You're bleeding too much," she said. "Let me help." She pressed a strip of fabric to the wound. The wolf tensed, then relaxed. Her hands glowed faintly where they touched him, a shimmer she didn't notice at first. The bleeding slowed. She exhaled shakily. "That's strange." The wolf's gaze never left her face. As the night deepened, Seren sang softly old lullabies from the orphan house. Her voice echoed against the cave walls, blending with the storm outside. "When the wind is cruel and the night is long, keep your heart alight with song." The wolves' breathing steadied. One by one they lay their heads down, surrounding her in a loose circle as if she were part of their pack. For the first time since the rejection, she felt a flicker of warmth that wasn't from the fire. She kept the flame alive, feeding it whenever it dimmed. Every so often she spoke to the pale-eyed leader. I don't know why I'm here. Maybe the goddess wanted me to find you. Maybe she didn't want me to die alone. The wolf gave a faint huff, like disagreement. Seren smiled tiredly. All right, maybe not alone then. She leaned back against the cave wall. Her body ached, her eyes burned with exhaustion, but she refused to sleep. She'd promised herself that if these creatures trusted her with their lives, she'd see the night through. The storm roared on, but inside the cave it felt like another world, a world of firelight, fur, and quiet breathing. Flashback, the whispers. Sometime before dawn, half dreaming, Seren remembered the first time she'd heard someone call her cursed. She had been 5, standing outside the pack house with snowflakes catching in her hair. 2 older boys had laughed and said, "Don't touch her. The snow follows her everywhere." Later, when she'd tried to play with the other pups, their mothers had pulled them away. The pale girl brings sickness. Even the healers had whispered when they thought she couldn't hear, born under an eclipse. Unnatural eyes. But old Nurse Mara had taken her hand and said, "Child, the moon doesn't curse, it marks. One day, that mark will mean something." Now, sitting among wounded wolves, Seren wondered if the nurse had been right all along. Dawn. The first grey light crept into the cave. The blizzard outside had softened to gentle flakes. Seren fed the last of the wood into the fire, her limbs heavy with fatigue. Then a low, unfamiliar sound filled the air, a crack like splitting ice. She looked up. The largest wolf, the one with blue eyes, was changing. Light rippled over his body. Fur shimmered, bones shifted, form stretching upward. In a blink, the wolf became a man. Seren gasped and stumbled back. The man was enormous, all muscle and scars, hair white blonde like winter sunlight. His eyes were the same glacial blue as before. Around him, the other wolves began to change too, one after another, until 12 men stood in the cave, the firelight flickering over bare skin and half-healed wounds. Seren's mind spun. "You're..." The leader stepped forward, his voice deep and rough from disuse. "We are the Ember Guard of the North." He looked down at her, expression unreadable. "And you, Omega, saved us." Seren swallowed hard, every instinct telling her to bow, run, something. "I didn't know who you were," she managed. "You were dying. I only did what anyone would." "Not anyone," he said quietly. "Most would have left us to freeze." The others murmured agreement. One of them, tall, dark-haired, with a slash across his cheek, added, "She kept watch all night, my king." "King?" Seren's gaze snapped back to the pale-haired man. He inclined his head slightly. "I am Ryan Draxon, Alpha King of Emberfall." The cave seemed to shrink around her. She had tended the wounds of a king. The most feared ruler in the north had slept with his head inches from her knees. I didn't mean any disrespect," she stammered. "I didn't know." Ryan lifted a hand, silencing her. "You saved my life, Seren Allery. For that, the King of Emberfall owes you a debt." The words echoed in the stone chamber like a promise and a warning at once. Seren could only stare, the warmth of the fire flickering against her cold skin, as outside the last flakes of the storm drifted down, a quiet ending to the night that had changed her fate forever. Chapter 3, The Storm's Voice. The world outside the cave had gone white and silent. The blizzard that had nearly killed Seren had left the mountains wrapped in thick snow, the sun pale and uncertain above the peaks. Inside, the fire still glowed, a single heart of orange warmth in a sea of cold blue light. Ryan Draxon, the Alpha King she had unknowingly saved, was no longer the half-conscious wolf she had tended through the night. Now he stood tall and alert, wrapped in a thick black cloak one of his guards had retrieved from their packs. Even injured, he carried himself like someone who had never once doubted his right to command. Seren could feel the weight of his attention, heavy and sharp as a blade. She kept her gaze low, kneeling by the fire to melt more snow in the clay pot. "You should drink," she said quietly. "You lost a lot of blood." The king didn't move immediately. "You are not afraid of me." Seren froze, the pot trembling slightly in her hands. "Should I be?" Ryan's mouth curved, just barely. "Most are. I've been rejected, banished, and nearly frozen to death," she said, forcing her voice steady. I think fear has already done its worst. That earned a low sound from one of the guards, half amusement, half surprise. Ryan's pale eyes softened for an instant before he looked toward the others. Cassian, inventory our wounds. LYR, check the outer ridge for movement. I want to know if the storm buried our supplies. The guards moved at once, silent and efficient. Even their footsteps had rhythm. Seren could tell these were not ordinary warriors, they were trained to move like one body. When only Ryan and 2 guards remained, Seren tried to stand. Her legs wobbled. I should go, she said. Now that the storm's over, I can find another way down. Ryan turned his gaze on her. Go. Where? Anywhere else, she murmured. You have your men. You don't need me. Need. He stepped closer, the firelight gilding his scars. Last night you carried 12 lives through a storm the gods themselves couldn't cross. You think that means nothing? She shook her head. I didn't do it for reward. That, he said quietly, is exactly why it matters. Seren didn't know what to say. Her hands twisted in the hem of her cloak, her heart pounding with confusion. It felt like too much, his intensity, the strange warmth in her chest when he looked at her, the pull that had brought her to this cave in the first place. Ryan studied her face for a long moment. Tell me, Seren Allery, why were you alone in the mountains? She hesitated. The truth tasted bitter. Because I was thrown away. One of the guards looked up sharply, but Ryan only said, explain. Seren's throat tightened. My pack decided I was cursed. My fated mate rejected me before the entire clan. They said I brought misfortune. The Alpha banished me before sunset. The silence that followed was heavy. Ryan's jaw tensed. You were banished for being born different. Seren's laugh was short and broken. You sound surprised. Packs fear what they can't understand. He stepped closer, voice low. What they call a curse may be a gift. Her eyes flicked to his. A gift? What kind of gift brings death and exile? The kind that saves kings from dying in snow. He held her gaze until her breath caught. The kind that guided you here. Seren turned away, pretending to tend the fire so he wouldn't see the confusion on her face. She didn't want to believe him, but something deep in her chest whispered that he was right. Hours later, the guards returned with supplies. A cache of dried meat and furs had survived the storm near the ridge. The fire grew brighter, the scent of roasting food filled the cave. Seren sat apart, watching the wolves eat, too uncertain to join them. Cassian approached her, crouching easily beside the fire. His dark hair fell across his forehead, and a scar cut through one eyebrow old, well-healed. You should eat, he said, offering a strip of meat. She hesitated. I don't want to take your share. He huffed. We're soldiers. We can miss a meal. You nearly froze saving us. Take it. She accepted, whispering a small, thank you. Cassian nodded toward the king. He's not used to being saved either, you know. Seren glanced at Ryan, who was talking quietly with another guard near the cave mouth. His expression was unreadable, but the firelight softened the edges of his usual hardness. He doesn't look like someone who needs saving, she murmured. That's the point, Cassian said. No one ever tries. He rose and left her to her thoughts. When night came again, the temperature dropped sharply. The fire's warmth didn't reach the edges of the cave. Ryan ordered the men to rest in shifts. Seren curled against the wall, wrapping her thin cloak tighter. Sleep came slowly. Sometime in the dark, she woke to the soft crunch of boots. Ryan stood by the fire, watching the storm outside through the cave entrance. Moonlight traced the lines of his face, strong jaw, high cheekbones, eyes the color of ice. There was something ancient about him, something lonely. He noticed her stirring and said quietly, You should sleep. I can't, she admitted. Every time I close my eyes, I hear the wind again. It sounds like it's calling my name. He looked at her sharply. Calling? She nodded. It started before I found the cave. Like, something was guiding me. Ryan's gaze deepened. The Everbloom. The what? He approached, his cloak whispering against the ground. An ancient gift. The Everbloom calls its bearer through storms and chaos, guiding them to those who need them most. It hasn't been seen in generations. Seren blinked. You think I have that? I don't think. His voice dropped to a near whisper. I know. She wanted to deny it, but her heart beat too fast, her skin prickling with the same warmth that had saved the wolves. Even if that's true, she said, why me? I'm no one. Ryan studied her for a long moment, then said simply, the goddess doesn't choose the proud. He turned away before she could respond, leaving her staring into the fire, the echoes of his words burning hotter than the flames themselves. Chapter 4, The Wolves of Emberfall. By morning, the snow had hardened into a crust of ice. The world outside glittered like glass. The wind had calmed, but the cold was sharper now, clean, merciless. The Ember Guard moved quickly, packing supplies and preparing to leave. Ryan ordered them with short, clipped commands, his authority absolute. Even wounded, he carried more presence than any Alpha Seren had ever met. She stood uncertainly near the cave mouth, staring at the endless expanse of white. Where will you go? Ryan asked, appearing beside her. I don't know, she admitted. Anywhere that isn't here. Alone. She looked down. I've always been alone. He studied her profile, the wind tugging at the loose strands of her silver hair. You shouldn't travel these mountains alone. The snowfields are treacherous even for trained warriors. Then what would you have me do? She asked quietly. I can't go back. No pack would take me. Ryan hesitated, then said, come with us. Seren stared at him. With you? To your kingdom? You saved the king of Emberfall, he said simply. That makes you under my protection. She shook her head quickly. I don't belong in a palace. I wouldn't fit in. You belong wherever you are needed, he said. And right now, you are needed with us. Cassian, standing nearby, arched a brow. You mean to take her back to the capital? She saved us, Ryan replied. The goddess sent her. I'll not question her will. Cassian glanced at Seren, then shrugged. As you command. Seren's heart raced. Part of her wanted to refuse. She had spent her entire life being told she didn't belong. Why would a king's court be any different? Yet something about Ryan's tone, steady and sure, made her want to believe him. Finally, she whispered, all right. I'll go. Ryan's expression softened for the first time since she'd met him. Good. The journey down the mountain was brutal. The snow was deep, the air so thin it burned her lungs. The Ember Guard moved like ghosts, silent and purposeful. They helped her when she stumbled, never mocking, never cruel, a strange change from the cold laughter of her old pack. At midday, the group stopped in a sheltered pass. Cassian handed her a flask of hot broth. You keep pace better than half my recruits, he said with a grin. Seren smiled faintly. I grew up shoveling snow every winter. Guess it trained me. Guess so. He tilted his head toward the king, who was surveying the horizon. You'll get used to his silences. Does he ever laugh? She asked. Cassian snorted. Once a year, maybe. But he used to. Before the curse. Seren looked up sharply. Curse? He lowered his voice. A frost sickness. His heart turns colder each winter. The healers can't stop it. That's why he was out here with us, searching for answers. She felt her chest tighten. And you think I think, Cassian interrupted, he believes you're the answer. Seren didn't know how to respond. The idea seemed absurd. She was no healer. Just a discarded Omega who'd followed a strange voice into a storm. Still, when she glanced toward Ryan, his eyes met hers across the snow, and for a fleeting second, she thought she saw warmth there, faint but real, like dawn light trying to pierce through frost. They reached the lower valleys as dusk settled. The landscape changed from barren ice to dark pine forest dusted with snow. Smoke rose faintly in the distance, the outer watchfires of Emberfall territory. Seren's exhaustion was bone deep, but wonder carried her forward. The air smelled of resin and cold earth, the trees glowed faintly under moonlight. She had never seen anything so wild and beautiful. Cassian fell into step beside her. Almost home, he said. You'll like the city. Built from obsidian and ice. When the sun hits it, the walls shine like mirrors. It sounds Magical, she said. It is. Dangerous, too. His tone turned serious. The council won't welcome you easily. The king's choices are always questioned. I didn't ask him to bring me. I know. But you saved him. That makes you part of his story now. Seren said nothing. The thought both frightened and thrilled her. Night had fallen by the time they reached the camp. The guards set up tents in a clearing near a frozen river. Ryan stood apart, watching the stars. Seren approached hesitantly. You never sleep. Not when others keep watch, he said. A leader should stay awake until the danger passes. You trust them, though, she said, glancing at his guards. With my life, he said. But habit is harder to kill than enemies. The faintest smile tugged at her mouth. You sound like someone who's been fighting too long. He looked at her then, really looked, and said, perhaps. But not without reason. For a moment, the only sound was the wind in the trees. Then Ryan said softly, when you found us, I was ready to let go. I thought the storm would end me. Then I felt warmth, your warmth. The Everbloom answered through you. Seren swallowed. I don't even understand what that means. You will, he said. In time. He turned to leave, but paused. Rest, Seren. Tomorrow we reach Emberfall. She watched him walk away, his figure fading into the dark, and wondered if fate had truly brought her here, or if she was walking into a story that had been waiting for her since the day she was born. The moon climbed high, silvering the forest. Seren lay awake in her tent, listening to the quiet breathing of the soldiers around her. She thought of Frostvale's sneers, of Yarek's cruel words, of the firelight flickering in the cave around the 12 wolves she'd saved. Everything had changed in one night. She didn't know what awaited her in Emberfall, praise or punishment, belonging or exile again, but for the first time, she wasn't running from her curse. She was following it. And somewhere deep inside, her wolf whispered, this is only the beginning. Chapter 5, Fire in the Cold. The dawn came late in the mountains. By the time the sun rose over the frozen pines, the Emberguard were already moving, their silhouettes sharp against the white hills. The cold was merciless, even the breath that left their mouths turned instantly to frost. Seren trudged behind them, her boots heavy with snow. The rough trail wound between cliffs of blue ice, and every gust of wind seemed to whisper her name. The others moved easily, their pace steady and sure. They were soldiers, trained to survive where no one else could. But she was not like them. Her legs burned, her lungs ached, and more than once she stumbled. Ryan was always a few steps ahead, his black cloak streaming behind him like a shadow given life. He never slowed, never stumbled. Yet each time Seren fell behind, he would stop without turning to wait until her footsteps caught up. When she finally reached him, she gasped, "You don't have to wait for me." He looked back over his shoulder, eyes glinting like ice caught in sunlight. "Yes, I do." Seren blinked. "Why?" "Because the path changes when you're not near," he said simply. She frowned. "That makes no sense." "It does," said Cassian, walking by. "Yesterday, before dawn, the king sent 2 scouts ahead. Both lost the trail within minutes. When you followed it later, we found the right way again." "That's impossible." "Or divine," Cassian said, smiling faintly. Ryan's voice was low. "It's the Everbloom. You are our compass, Seren." She shook her head. "I'm no one's compass. I'm just trying not to die in the snow." "Then keep not dying," Cassian said cheerfully. "It's helping us." Despite herself, Seren laughed. The sound startled even her. It had been so long since she'd laughed at all. Ryan turned his gaze toward the horizon. "We'll rest soon. The valley below leads to Emberfall. Another day's march." The promise of warmth and safety gave her strength. She pressed on. By evening, they reached a wide plateau overlooking a frozen lake. Ryan ordered camp there, and the soldiers built a ring of small fires against the wind. The scent of wood smoke filled the air. Seren helped Cassian unpack the rations, though her hands still trembled from the cold. "How long until we reach your city?" she asked. "Tomorrow, if the weather holds." "Does it ever hold?" Cassian grinned. "Not often." He passed her a fur-lined cloak from one of the supply packs. "Here." The king said you're to wear this. She hesitated. The cloak was beautiful, black wolf fur lined with dark silver silk. It looked like something meant for royalty. I can't take this, she murmured. It's too fine. It's not a request, Cassian said lightly. He won't say it, but he worries you'll freeze before we get home. Seren felt warmth rise to her cheeks. He doesn't even know me. Cassian's smile faded slightly. He didn't know you yesterday. That's not the same as not knowing you now. She didn't understand what he meant, but she took the cloak anyway. When night came, she sat by the fire with the guards. They shared quiet stories, how each had joined Ryan's service, the battles they'd fought, the loyalty they held to their king. One of them, a broad-shouldered warrior named Dane, said, "We've followed him through fire, frost, and blood. No alpha has ever led as he has. But even kings break under curses." "What curse?" Seren asked before she could stop herself. The fire crackled. The men exchanged glances, uncertain. Finally Cassian said softly, "His heart freezes a little more each winter. It's not a sickness of the body, it's magic. Ancient, cruel magic. The healers call it the frostbane. Can it be cured?" "No one's ever found the way," Cassian said. "Until now, maybe." Seren felt her chest tighten. "You think I can?" Cassian met her eyes. "The storm didn't lead you to him by chance." Before she could answer, Ryan's voice carried from the edge of the camp. "Rest now. We travel at first light." The soldiers obeyed, leaving Seren alone with her thoughts. She stared into the fire. The flames danced and shimmered, reflecting in her violet eyes. She didn't believe in destiny, not really, but if the moon goddess truly had a plan, this was a strange one. Still, when the wind rose and the stars trembled, she felt that same pull inside her chest, a warmth that whispered, "Stay with him." That night, she dreamed of a silver field under the moon. She stood barefoot in the snow, surrounded by shadow wolves. One of them, larger than the rest, stepped forward and bowed. "You are the light that warms the cold," the wolf said in a voice like wind through ice. "But light burns, and even kings fear fire." Seren woke with her heart pounding. The dream faded quickly, but the words stayed. When she looked across the camp, she saw Ryan watching her from the darkness, his eyes bright as the stars above. Chapter 6, The Wolf King Revealed. The next morning dawned grey and silent. A mist had settled over the valley, thick as breath. They started before sunrise, the guards moving in tight formation with Seren near the center. Every sound was muffled, the crunch of boots, the soft jingle of metal, the whisper of wind through trees. By midday, the mist began to thin, and the landscape changed. Black stone cliffs rose on either side of a narrow pass. Beyond them, the faint shimmer of towers gleamed through the haze. Emberfall. The city of the north. Seren had never seen anything like it. The walls were carved from obsidian, their surfaces streaked with veins of ice that glittered like stars. Pale smoke curled from spires, and the sound of distant horns echoed faintly through the air. Her steps slowed. "It's beautiful." Ryan's voice was quiet behind her. "And dangerous." She turned to look at him. "Why?" "Because everything beautiful in this world has enemies." They reached the gates at dusk. 2 sentries stood guard, both in armor of black steel. When they saw their king, they bowed deeply. "Your Majesty," one said, eyes flicking toward Seren. "You've returned, with company." Ryan's tone was calm but final. "She is under my protection. No one will question it." "Yes, my king." The guard stepped aside. Seren followed him through the archway. Inside, the city was alive with light. Fires burned in glass braziers that glowed blue and gold. Streets of dark stone wound between high towers. Wolves in human form moved through the shadows, their eyes glinting in the lamplight. It felt ancient and alive, like stepping into a heartbeat. They led her through the main courtyard and into a great hall carved from crystal and stone. The ceiling was so high it vanished into darkness. In its center stood a massive throne made of black ice. Ryan took his seat, his presence filling the room. The guards arranged themselves behind him in a protective half-circle. "Seren Allery," he said, voice echoing off the walls. "You stand before the King of Emberfall." The law of this land demands you declare who you are and why you have come. Seren's stomach twisted. She bowed low. I didn't come here to claim anything. I only followed the storm. I didn't even know who you were when I found you. Yet you saved me. I only did what was right. Ryan's gaze softened. Then what do you seek now? She hesitated. A place to rest. Somewhere I'm not hated for what I am. The silence stretched. The guards shifted uneasily. Finally Ryan said, then you will have it. The words seemed to surprise even his men. Cassian stepped forward. Your Majesty, the council will question this. They already question everything, Ryan interrupted. Let them. He turned back to Seren. You will stay in the east wing of the citadel. Elder Thessa will see to your comfort. Seren blinked. You're giving me a room in your palace? A room? His eyes glinted. No. A place. A promise of safety. She didn't know how to answer. All she could do was bow again, whispering, Thank you, Your Majesty. Ryan stood. Call me Ryan when we are alone. Her heart skipped. Why would you? Because a king owes respect to those who save his life. He walked past her then, the scent of snow and smoke trailing in his wake. As he disappeared through the hall doors, she exhaled the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Cassian touched her shoulder gently. Come on. I'll show you to your rooms before the court tries to swarm you. The east wing overlooked the frozen gardens. Tall windows framed the view of the mountains beyond. A fire already burned in the hearth, and thick furs covered the bed. Seren stood in the middle of the room, stunned. This can't be real. Cassian smiled. It is. The king's word is law. She turned to him. Does he always do this? Bring strangers home? Never. Then why me? Cassian's smile faded. Because he thinks you're the one the goddess sent. Before she could respond, a knock came at the door. An elderly woman entered, her grey hair braided with silver ribbons. Her eyes were bright as moonlight. Elder Thessa, Cassian said respectfully. This is the one who found us. Thessa's gaze swept over Seren, calm and knowing. Ah. The pale child of frost and fire. Seren frowned. You know me. In a way, Thessa said gently. The moon whispers names before they are born. Yours was one of them. Seren's throat tightened. Everyone always said I was cursed. Cursed? Thessa smiled. Child, you carry light where no one else dares. That is not a curse, it is a calling. Tears pricked Seren's eyes, unbidden. I don't feel like light. Then perhaps you've simply forgotten how to shine. Thessa moved to the hearth, adding another log to the fire. Rest tonight. Tomorrow you will meet the council. They will test your strength. My strength. They will want to see if the king's faith in you is foolish. Seren's heart sank. And if they decide it is? Thessa's eyes gleamed. Then you show them what the moon herself chose. Later, when the hallways fell silent, Seren stood by the window and looked out over Emberfall. The city glowed softly under the moonlight, the towers sparkling like shards of ice. Somewhere in the courtyard below, Ryan trained with his soldiers, his movements sharp and sure. He fought with silent precision, every strike purposeful. For a long time, Seren simply watched. There was something magnetic about him, strength wrapped in restraint, fire hidden under frost. He paused suddenly, as though sensing her gaze. Their eyes met across the distance. Neither moved. Then Ryan lifted his sword in a slow salute before turning away, vanishing into the shadows of the training yard. Seren's heart beat too fast. She pressed her hand to her chest, whispering to the cold glass of the window, "What are you doing to me?" The city didn't answer. But far below, the wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of snow and something new, something like the promise of fire. Chapter 7, The Cursed Gift. The next morning came with a ringing of bells that echoed through the citadel's frozen corridors. Seren woke with a start, the sound sharp and unfamiliar. Sunlight spilled across the floor through a tall window, painting the room in pale gold. For a long moment, she didn't move. The bed beneath her was soft, the air warm, the fire still burning gently in the hearth. It didn't feel real. Only the faint ache in her hands, the memory of cold and snow, reminded her it wasn't a dream. She rose and found a dress laid out on the chair near the fire, a gown of soft grey wool, trimmed with white fur. Next to it, a silver belt and a small crest in the shape of a wolf's head. A note rested on top. Wear this to the council meeting. Ah. She traced the single letter with her fingertip. The handwriting was precise and deliberate, just like its author. When she dressed, the gown fit perfectly. Someone had guessed her size exactly. 2 guards led her through the hallways toward the council chamber. The air was cold enough to mist her breath, and her footsteps echoed off the stone. The room she entered was vast, with high arched windows and a long table carved from dark wood. 12 council members sat in a half-circle, old wolves with white hair, sharp eyes, and expressions that gave nothing away. At the head of the chamber sat Ryan, the king of Emberfall, draped in his black cloak trimmed with silver. His expression was unreadable, but when Seren entered, his eyes found her immediately. "Seren Allery," he said, his voice carrying easily through the room. "You have been called before the Council of Icevale to answer for your arrival in Emberfall." Seren bowed slightly. "I didn't mean to cause trouble, Your Majesty." Ryan raised a hand. "Speak honestly, not cautiously. They will sense fear." The oldest councillor, a woman with hair as white as snow, leaned forward. "Tell us, child, how you came to be in the company of our king." Seren clasped her hands tightly. "I was banished from my pack. I was caught in a storm and found a cave. The king and his guards were there injured. I helped them." The room murmured with disbelief. "You helped the Alpha King," one man repeated. "You expect us to believe a lone Omega saved 13 trained warriors from the storm?" Ryan's gaze hardened. "It's not belief I require, Counselor. It's respect for truth." "But Majesty," another protested, "she carries the mark. Look at her eyes." All eyes turned toward Seren. She felt the weight of their judgment like stones pressing against her chest. "My eyes have always been this way," she said softly. "I can't change them. They are cursed," the man hissed. "A sign of unnatural power. No good ever came from the moons marked." Ryan's voice dropped, low and cold. "You speak of my savior." Silence fell. The man looked away. Ryan turned to Seren. "Show them what you showed me." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "The warmth," he said. "The fire that saved us in the storm." Her pulse quickened. "I don't know how I did that. It just happened." "Try." She hesitated. The councillors whispered to each other, skepticism thick in the air. Finally, she took a slow breath and held out her hands. She thought of the cave, of the dying wolves and the desperate need to help them. She remembered the fire, the warmth that had bloomed inside her chest like a second heartbeat. Her palms began to glow. It started faintly, soft light under her skin, then flared brighter, a gentle silver-gold shimmer that filled the cold hall with warmth. The council gasped. Frost on the windows melted, turning to droplets that slid down the glass. Seren dropped her hands in shock. I didn't mean to." Ryan stood, his voice calm but powerful. "That is the Everbloom gift. The moon's own light, reborn after centuries." The old woman councillor whispered, "Impossible." "Possible," Ryan said. "And standing before you." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the eldest man on the council leaned forward. "If she truly carries the Everbloom, she is both miracle and danger. Such power attracts enemies. Are you prepared, Majesty, to defend her against them?" Ryan's jaw tightened. "I already have." The council bowed their heads. "Then we will trust your judgment, for now." When the meeting ended, the councillors filed out one by one, leaving only Seren and Ryan in the hall. She turned to him, her voice trembling. "You didn't have to do that. They hate me already." "They fear you," he corrected. "Fear and hate are different. Fear can become respect. I don't want to be feared." "Then don't hide your light," he said. "Make them see it." Seren stared at him. "You make it sound simple." Ryan's eyes softened slightly. "Nothing about you is simple." Before she could respond, he turned and walked away, his cloak trailing like a shadow. That evening, Seren went to the courtyard gardens to clear her thoughts. Snowflakes drifted down in slow spirals. The trees were heavy with frost, their branches glimmering under the lanterns. She sat on a stone bench and watched the snow fall until her mind grew quiet. Then she heard footsteps behind her. "I thought I'd find you here," Ryan said, stepping into the light. Seren turned. "I needed air. The council, they looked at me like I was a monster. You handled them well. I felt like I was going to faint. Still, you stood." He moved closer, his expression thoughtful. "You've been told you're cursed your whole life. But what if the curse is only the beginning of something sacred?" She met his gaze. "You really believe that?" "I've seen what you can do," he said simply. "Belief isn't required." The air between them felt alive, humming softly. The snow seemed to fall slower, as though even time was listening. Seren swallowed. "You don't know me, Ryan. You don't know what I've done, what I've lost." "Then tell me," he said. She looked down at her hands. "I tried to help my old pack. When sickness came, I spent days with the ill. They said I made it worse. That I spread it. I was just trying to help." "You were healing them," Ryan said. "Your power burns cold at first, it freezes what it cannot save. You didn't cause their deaths. You delayed them." She stared at him, stunned. "How can you know that?" He looked toward the mountains. "Because my own healers tried the same once and failed. Only a true bearer of the moon's light could have lasted as long as you did." Seren blinked away tears. "No one ever said that before." "Then let this be the first truth you hear here. Your worth isn't defined by their fear." For the first time, she smiled, a small, unsteady smile that reached her eyes. "Thank you." Ryan inclined his head. "You saved my life, Seren Allery. The least I can do is remind you of your own." He left her then, the faintest smile ghosting his lips. When he was gone, Seren whispered to the falling snow, "Maybe curses can bloom, after all." Chapter 8, Shadow and Trust. Days passed in a blur of learning and uneasy peace. Elder Thessa took Seren under her wing, teaching her about the customs of the North, the rites of the moon, the laws of the Alpha Courts, and the legends of the Everbloom. According to the old healer, the Everbloom gift appeared only once every few centuries, when the North's heart was in danger. It was said to awaken in those who acted with selfless compassion. "The power responds to need," Thessa explained one morning as they ground herbs together in a warm chamber. "Not to command. You cannot summon it for yourself, only for others." Seren nodded. "So it's not mine to control." "Precisely. It chooses when to bloom." The thought was both comforting and terrifying. Later that day, she found herself walking through the lower corridors of the citadel, exploring halls lined with ancient carvings of wolves and moons. She traced one with her finger, a wolf kneeling before a burning flower. A voice startled her. "That's the first carving of the Everbloom." She turned. Cassian leaned against the wall, smiling faintly. "You've been keeping busy. Trying to understand why everyone here thinks I'm important," she said. "I'm not." Cassian chuckled. "You saved our king. That makes you important enough." She looked down. "You think that's all this is? Gratitude?" His smile faded. "With him, nothing is that simple." Before she could ask what he meant, the sound of raised voices echoed from deeper within the hall. Ryan's voice, cold and sharp. "You dare question my decision?" Another voice, older, angry. "You bring a stranger into our home, into our laws. She carries power we don't understand." Seren's stomach dropped. She edged closer to the open doorway ahead, peering inside. The king stood at the head of the room, his eyes blazing with restrained fury. Two council members faced him, defiant. "She is dangerous," one of them said. "The people whisper. They fear her." Ryan's voice was ice. "Then teach them courage. Majesty. Enough." The single word froze the air. Without her, there would be no king to argue with. "I will hear no more doubts." The councillors bowed stiffly and left, their robes snapping as they passed Seren in the doorway. One of them hissed under his breath, "Cursed girl." Seren flinched. Ryan turned, seeing her there. "You heard." "Yes." Her voice trembled. I didn't mean to. He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. Do not let their words wound you. They cling to fear because it's easier than faith. But they're right, she said, eyes shining. Everywhere I go, fear follows. Then make it follow for the right reason, he said softly. Let them fear the strength of your kindness, not the shadow of your curse. Something in his tone made her throat ache. You make it sound easy. It isn't. But neither is being king. Their eyes held for a long, silent moment. Then he said, more gently, walk with me. He led her through a set of doors onto a high balcony overlooking the city. The wind was cold, but the view took her breath away. The rooftops glimmered under the fading sun, and beyond them, the mountains burned gold. This is Emberfall, he said quietly. My home. My burden. Seren looked up at him. You built all this? My ancestors did. I've only kept it alive. And they call me cursed. He smiled faintly. Perhaps they're right. Curses build kingdoms too. She laughed softly, the sound blending with the wind. You're not what I expected, Ryan Draxon. And what did you expect? A king of ice, she said honestly. Not one who keeps his word. He looked out toward the horizon. The frost keeps what it claims. So do I. The words carried weight she couldn't quite name. They stood there in silence until the last light faded, the city below flickering to life with hundreds of blue lanterns. For the first time since her banishment, Seren felt something that almost resembled peace. She turned to Ryan, her voice soft. Thank you. For everything. He didn't look at her, but his answer was quiet and sure. Don't thank me yet, Seren Allery. The hardest part hasn't begun. A chill, not from the wind, ran down her spine. When she looked again, the king's expression had changed. Beneath the calm surface, something darker stirred, an old sorrow, a buried secret. And in that moment, Seren understood, the storm that had brought her here wasn't over. It had only changed its shape. Chapter 9, Through Ice and Fire. Snow fell again, thin and whispering, as if the sky itself feared to disturb the quiet that had settled over Emberfall. In the days that followed, Seren began to understand that peace in the citadel was a fragile illusion. Beneath the calm routines and shining towers, she could feel tension like the tremor before an avalanche. Everywhere she walked, whispers followed. Servants paused mid-step, guards lowered their gazes, council members muttered behind closed doors. Some bowed with respect. Others made the sign of warding as she passed. Elder Thessa called it fear. Cassian called it jealousy. Seren called it loneliness. Still, she tried to be useful. She helped the healers in the infirmary, using her warmth to ease fevers and frostbite. She spent hours in the libraries, learning the history of the North. And each night, she sat by her window, watching the king's torch burn late into the dark hours. Ryan Draxon never seemed to rest. One night, after another long day of studying scrolls and herbs, Seren decided to bring him food. She carried a tray of bread, stew, and spiced tea through the winding halls until she reached the council chamber where light still flickered under the door. She hesitated, then knocked softly. Enter, came his low voice. He was standing by a table covered in maps, one hand pressed to his temple. The light from the lantern threw sharp shadows across his face, highlighting the tension in his jaw. You're still working, she said. Ryan looked up, faint surprise flickering in his eyes. I could say the same of you. I'm not a king, Seren said with a small smile. Kings need food too. She set the tray down. The smell of warm broth filled the air. Ryan's eyes softened slightly. You didn't have to. Maybe not. But you look like you haven't eaten since sunrise. He sat, more out of politeness than hunger at first, but after the first bite, his posture eased. You cook. I used to help in the pack kitchens, she said, leaning against the table. Mostly because no one wanted to eat near me. Easier to stay busy. He frowned, the muscles in his cheek tightening. They didn't deserve your kindness. I didn't do it for them. I did it to feel less invisible. Ryan looked up sharply, meeting her gaze. You are anything but invisible now. Her pulse skipped. That's not always a good thing. He didn't answer, but something unspoken passed between them, a quiet understanding of what it meant to be both seen and isolated. For a moment, silence filled the room, heavy and comfortable at once. The crackle of the fire was the only sound. Then Ryan said, "The guards tell me you've been helping the healers." "I'm trying," Seren said. "I can't always control the warmth. Sometimes it's too strong, sometimes nothing happens at all." He nodded. "It will take time. Gifts like yours are born of emotion, not command. The more you trust yourself, the steadier it will become." "I'm trying to trust," she said quietly. "But it's hard when everyone around me expects me to fail." Ryan stood slowly, his chair scraping against the stone. He stopped just in front of her, close enough that she could feel the faint heat of his presence. "Then ignore their expectations," he said. "Meet your own." Seren looked up at him, her voice small. "And if I don't know what those are? Then we'll find them together." The words were simple, but they carried warmth deeper than fire. When he moved past her to set aside his plate, she realized her heart was racing and she wasn't sure when it had started. The next day brought a sudden change. Just before noon, a horn sounded through the citadel, a low, mournful note that made everyone freeze. Cassian burst into the library where Seren had been reading. "Rogues near the border," he said quickly. "A scouting party. The king's already gone." Seren's book fell from her hands. "Gone? Alone? With the guard? He left orders for you to stay here." Her chest tightened. "How bad is it?" Cassian hesitated. "Bad enough. Rogues don't usually cross this far north. Someone's stirring them." "I'm coming," Seren said. Cassian blinked. "You can't. It's too dangerous." "I saved him once," she said, standing. If the goddess sent me to do that, she didn't mean just once. Cassian looked at her for a long second, then cursed softly. "You're as stubborn as he is." He threw her a cloak. "Stay close to me. If you die, he'll kill me himself." They reached the outskirts of the northern forest by dusk. The snow there was darker, tainted by soot and ash. The smell of smoke stung Seren's nose. In the clearing ahead, Ryan fought surrounded by rogues, wild wolves with grey fur and feral eyes. The Ember Guard formed a ring around him, blades flashing. Seren's breath caught. He moved like fire through frost, his sword an extension of his body, his strikes precise and merciless. But even she could see it, his movements were slowing. His breath came in pained bursts. Cassian swore. "The frost sickness. It's hitting him again." Seren didn't hesitate. She ran forward, ignoring Cassian's shout. The cold bit at her lungs, but she kept going. "Ryan," she cried. He turned toward her voice, his eyes widening in shock. "Seren, get back." But it was too late. One of the rogues lunged toward him from behind. Without thinking, Seren raised her hands. Light exploded from her palms. It surged across the clearing like a wave, silver and gold, blinding the wolves and scattering them like leaves in the wind. The snow hissed and melted where it touched. When the light faded, silence fell. Every rogue lay unconscious, the air thick with the scent of burned frost. Seren collapsed to her knees, her body shaking. Ryan caught her before she hit the ground. His hands were warm, his heartbeat strong against her shoulder. "Foolish girl," he murmured, voice rough with relief. "You could have been killed." "So could you," she whispered weakly. He pulled back just enough to look at her face. "You're trembling. Using it takes everything," she said, panting. "But it worked." Ryan's gaze softened. It worked. He lifted her easily into his arms, ignoring Cassian's protests. "We're going home." And for the first time, Seren didn't argue. Chapter 10, The Citadel of Emberfall. When Seren woke, she was back in her chamber. The fire blazed high in the hearth, and soft light filtered through the curtains. Her limbs felt heavy, her head light. Elder Thessa sat beside the bed, her lined face creased with both worry and pride. "Welcome back, child," she said. "You've been asleep for nearly a day." Seren tried to sit up. "The battle won," Thessa said. "Thanks to you." Seren blinked. "Me?" "The light you called upon," Thessa said, burned the frost and broke the rogue's madness. Whatever drives them will think twice before testing us again. Seren's chest swelled with relief and fear. I didn't know I could do that. Neither did I, Thessa said, smiling faintly. The Everbloom grows stronger with purpose. Before Seren could reply, the door opened quietly. Ryan entered. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, but when he saw her sitting up, relief washed over his face. You're awake. Thessa rose and bowed. I'll leave you to speak. When she was gone, Ryan approached the bed. For once, the usually steady Alpha seemed unsure what to say. Seren saved him the trouble. You shouldn't have gone alone. He arched a brow. You shouldn't have followed. I don't take orders well. He almost smiled. I've noticed. The moment stretched between them, quiet and full of things neither of them could name. Finally, Seren said, Cassian told me about your heart, the frost sickness. Ryan's jaw tightened. He talks too much. I could feel it, she said softly. When you were fighting. The cold inside you. It hurts you, doesn't it? It's manageable. You're lying. He exhaled slowly. Every winter, it grows worse. My blood turns to ice, my heart slows. One day it will stop entirely. The healers can't undo it. Seren's fingers clenched in the blanket. Let me try. He looked at her sharply. You've done enough. Not if I can save you. Seren. She reached for his hand. The warmth flared immediately, golden and soft, spilling from her skin to his. Ryan stiffened, eyes wide. The cold in him fought back, she could feel it, sharp as knives under her palm. But she didn't stop. She pushed her warmth deeper, light against frost, until the pain eased from his face and his breathing steadied. When she let go, the room was glowing faintly, the fire burning brighter than before. Ryan stared at her. What did you do? I didn't heal you, she said, breathing hard. But I pushed the cold back. You'll have more time. He looked at her for a long, silent moment. Then he said quietly, you risked your life. So did you, every day since I met you. His lips twitched, a hint of a smile. You are reckless. So are you. Then we are well matched. The words slipped out before he could stop them, and Seren's breath caught. Ryan's expression softened, a rare warmth breaking through the mask of the king. Rest now, he said finally. The court will demand your presence soon enough. As he turned to go, Seren called after him. Ryan. He paused at the door. She smiled faintly. Thank you. For letting me stay. He met her eyes, his voice quiet but sure. You were never meant to leave. That evening, as the sun set over Emberfall, the citadel came alive with light. Bells rang from the towers, and the air smelled of burning cedar. The people celebrated the king's victory at the border, unaware that their true savior slept behind the palace walls. From her window, Seren watched the lanterns drift upward like tiny moons. For the first time since her exile, she felt something she hadn't dared feel in years: hope. But far beyond the city, in the dark mountains, something moved. Eyes the color of frost opened beneath the snow. A voice whispered through the wind, cold and cruel. The Everbloom has awakened. The girl must not live. And with that, the next storm began to gather. Chapter 11, Shadows over Emberfall. The snow had stopped falling, but the air felt heavier than before, charged with something unseen. Even within the warmth of the citadel, Seren sensed it, a subtle wrongness, a whisper that the mountains no longer slept peacefully. Rumors began to move through Emberfall like frost spreading over glass. The rogues were not acting alone. There were whispers of a shadowed Alpha in the east, one who had once ruled beside Ryan before turning on him, a traitor king who commanded the storms themselves. Seren overheard two guards murmuring in the corridor one morning. They say the Frostbane's curse came from him. Impossible. The king would have destroyed him long ago. Not if he's already dead, or worse. The moment they saw Seren, they fell silent and bowed. But their words lingered. When she entered the training yard later that day, she found Ryan already there. His sword moved in perfect arcs, slicing through the air with the grace of a dancer. The sunlight caught on the steel, throwing shards of light across the walls. Good morning, Seren said softly. Ryan glanced at her, his chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. "You should be resting." "I have," she said, stepping closer. "But rest doesn't quiet thoughts." He stopped mid-strike, lowering his blade. "Then speak them." "The rogues," she said. "You think someone's controlling them." His eyes narrowed slightly. "You've been listening." "I hear what people whisper," Seren said. "They think you know who it is." Ryan was silent for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "Once, long ago, there was another Alpha King. My brother, Koren." Seren blinked. "Brother?" "By oath, not by blood," Ryan said. "We were raised together as cubs. He was a soldier before I ever wore a crown. When our father died, the moon's choice was made. She gave the crown to me. Koren believed it should have been his. What happened to him? I thought I killed him." His tone was cold, distant. "Years ago, when he betrayed the north and summoned the frost storms. But if the rogues move again under one command, then perhaps I was wrong." Seren's heart tightened. "And the curse you carry, it came from him?" Ryan looked away. "He called it his gift. The Frostbane. His final curse before I ended him. It has lived in my blood ever since." "Then he's tied to you still," Seren said softly. "Alive or not?" Ryan's jaw clenched. "If he is alive, I will finish what began that night. You won't fight him alone." His eyes met hers. "Seren. You need me," she said. "The rogues, the storms, all of it leads back to the same magic that brought me here. The moon didn't put me in your path by accident." He exhaled slowly, as though the weight of her words pressed directly against his chest. "You would face a ghost of my making? I would face anything beside you." For a moment, something unspoken flashed between them, something that felt dangerously like promise. Ryan turned away first, his voice rough. "Then you will train." "Train?" He tossed her a wooden practice blade. "You saved me once with light. Now you'll learn to save yourself with steel." Seren caught the sword awkwardly. "I've never." "Then you'll learn," he said. "Starting now." And just like that, the Wolf King of Emberfall began to teach her how to fight. The days that followed were filled with bruises, sore muscles, and unexpected laughter. Ryan was a merciless teacher, demanding, precise, never satisfied. But beneath his sharp commands, Seren began to see flashes of the man behind the crown. When she stumbled, he steadied her. When she faltered, he reminded her, strength isn't about winning. It's about standing when you've fallen. And every time she lifted her sword again, she felt something shift inside her, a quiet pride that had nothing to do with the moon's gift and everything to do with her own will. One afternoon, when the training ended, Ryan took her hand and examined a small cut across her palm. "You push too hard," he said. She smiled faintly. "So do you." He looked up, his eyes locking with hers. "That's what keeps us alive." Her heart beat faster, and she pulled her hand away before he could notice. "Maybe. But sometimes, it's what breaks us too." That night, she dreamed again. The same silver field. The same shadow wolves. But this time, the largest of them, the one with eyes of black frost, spoke clearly. "The king's heart beats with my curse. When it stops, the north will fall. Break the chain, or burn beside him." Seren woke with a scream caught in her throat. Her chamber was dark, the fire nearly dead. She stumbled from bed, her skin cold with sweat. She didn't think. She just ran. Through the corridors, past the guards who called after her, until she reached the king's door. She knocked once, twice, no answer. Then she pushed it open. Ryan stood at the window, the moonlight turning his hair silver. He looked at her with mild surprise. "Seren." "I saw him," she whispered. "The one who cursed you. His coming." Chapter 12, The Ghost King. Ryan turned sharply, his eyes narrowing. "What did you say?" "I saw him," she repeated, breathless. "In a dream. A wolf made of shadow. He said your heart is the chain that binds the north. If it breaks, the north will fall," Ryan finished, his voice low. "It's the prophecy he spoke before I struck him down." Seren's hands trembled. "Then he's alive." Ryan's gaze turned distant. Or death never stopped him. He moved toward his desk, pulling open drawers, scattering papers. If he's returned, the wards around Emberfall will break. I need to send word to the border camps. Seren grabbed his arm. You can't face him alone. I have to. His mine to end. And if you die. He froze. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Seren said softly, you told me the frost grows worse every year. If you go after him now, he'll finish what he started. Ryan's expression flickered, pain hidden beneath iron. What choice do I have? If I don't stop him, he'll drown the north in ice. Then let me help, she said. Let the light fight the frost. You don't understand what he is, Seren. He's no longer a man. He's the storm itself. Then I'll face the storm. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a blade. Ryan stared at her, this small, fragile girl who had walked out of exile and into destiny, and saw something he couldn't deny. Finally, he said, if you insist on joining me, you'll do exactly as I say. She nodded. I promise. He almost smiled. You'll break that promise. Probably. That earned her a quiet chuckle, low and unexpected. It melted the tension just enough to make her heart twist. Then get ready, he said. We leave at dawn. By morning, the city was shrouded in fog. The bells of Emberfall tolled once, low and solemn. Cassian met them at the stables, his expression grim. You're both mad, he said. But if you're going to hunt ghosts, I'm coming too. Ryan mounted his black warhorse, motioning for Seren to do the same on a smaller mare. Stay close, he said. The mist hides more than wind. They rode north, the world growing colder with every mile. The trees twisted under frost, their branches bending like claws. By noon, they reached the ruins of an old fortress, the place where Ryan said Koren had fallen. Seren dismounted slowly, her breath clouding in the air. This is where you fought him? Yes. And where he cursed you? Ryan nodded. His blood soaked this ground. I thought it ended here. As if summoned by the words, the wind rose. A low, hollow howl swept through the ruins. Then a voice. Brother. The air itself seemed to freeze. Shadows gathered at the edges of the courtyard, twisting into shape. A figure stepped forward tall, cloaked in black ice, eyes burning with cold fire. Seren's breath hitched. Koren. Ryan drew his sword, the steel gleaming silver. You should have stayed dead. Koren laughed, a sound like cracking glass. And miss this? Watching my curse eat you from the inside. No, brother. I came to finish it. Seren felt the frost spread across the ground toward her feet. The cold stung her skin like knives. She raised her hands instinctively, light beginning to shimmer in her palms. Koren's gaze snapped to her. Ah. The moon's child. The flame that melts my winter. Stay back, Seren warned. He smiled. I remember you, little spark. The one my curse called across the mountains. You think you came here by chance? Seren's pulse stopped. What? The Everbloom didn't lead you, Koren said softly. I did. Ryan stepped in front of her, fury flashing in his eyes. You lie. Do I? Koren's smile widened. You felt her warmth the night she found you. That was my gift to you, dear brother, a fire that will burn you from within. The girl is your salvation and your doom. Seren's voice broke. No. That can't be true. Koren raised his hand, and the sky darkened. Snow began to fall again, black snow, thick and silent. You'll see soon enough. With a roar, Ryan lunged, his sword meeting Koren's frost. Sparks exploded, fire and ice colliding in blinding bursts of light. Seren fell back, shielding her face. Cassian shouted orders somewhere behind her. Wolves howled in the distance. The air was alive with chaos. Ryan fought like fury itself, but Koren's power was unnatural. Every strike of his blade turned the air to shards of ice. Seren's hands shook. She could feel the warmth rising in her chest, but fear choked it. He said I was his creation, his trap. Ryan faltered just for an instant, and Koren struck, the blow sending him sprawling across the snow. No. Seren screamed. The frost rushed toward the fallen king, crawling up his limbs. Without thinking, she ran forward, falling to her knees beside him. "Ryan, look at me." His eyes were open but fading, the frost crawling toward his heart. "Seren." His voice was barely a whisper. "Don't." She pressed her palms to his chest, pouring every ounce of warmth she had left. Light flared, golden and wild, flooding the ruins with radiance. The frost hissed and cracked, retreating from his skin. Koren snarled, shielding his face. "You would burn the north to save him?" Seren looked up, eyes blazing. "If I have to." The light erupted from her, brighter than the sun. The shadows screamed and shattered. Koren's form dissolved into a storm of ice and vanished into the wind. When the glow faded, Seren collapsed against Ryan's chest, shaking, breathless, empty. He caught her hand weakly. "You should have run." "I told you," she murmured, eyes heavy. "I don't take orders well." His lips curved faintly. "You never did." As the ruins fell silent, the wind carried away the last echoes of Koren's laughter, faint but lingering. And though the frost had broken, Ryan could still feel it deep in his chest, pulsing faintly. The curse had weakened. But it had not ended. Chapter 13, The Price of Fire. The storm had passed, leaving the mountains eerily quiet. Snow lay in broken patches across the ruins, blackened where Seren's light had burned through it. The air smelled of frost and smoke, of something ancient newly disturbed. Ryan sat slumped against the remnants of a fallen arch, his breath shallow but steady. The frost that had crawled over his skin was gone, melted by Seren's warmth, but exhaustion clung to him like a second cloak. Seren knelt at his side, trembling. Every muscle in her body screamed in pain. Her palms were blistered from channeling too much light, but she didn't care. She only saw him alive. Cassian and the guards were tending to the aftermath nearby, dragging the last of the fallen rogues into the snow to burn. The smell of singed fur hung in the wind. "You should rest," Cassian said as he approached. "You've both done enough for one lifetime." Seren shook her head, brushing hair from her face. "He needs to go back to the citadel. The frost is still in him." Ryan's eyes fluttered open. "You're hurt." "You're worse," she whispered. "Don't move." He tried to sit up anyway, grimacing as pain lanced through him. "The rogues." "Gone," Cassian said firmly. "What's left of them ran east. Whatever held them together broke when she burned him." Ryan's gaze shifted to Seren. "You destroyed him?" Her voice faltered. "I think so." He turned into ice, then vanished. Ryan's expression darkened. "If he truly bound his soul to the storm, he'll return. Frost never dies, it only sleeps." Seren swallowed hard. "Then we'll be ready when he wakes." The way she said we made something tighten in Ryan's chest. He looked away before she could see it. They reached Emberfall 3 days later. The return was quieter than the departure, no horns, no fanfare. Just exhaustion. The citadel's great gates opened slowly, creaking in protest as snow slid off their iron edges. Word of their victory spread faster than fire. By nightfall, the people lined the streets with lanterns, their voices rising in song to the moon. But the king did not appear. He remained in his chambers, weakened and silent. Seren refused to leave his side. Elder Thessa met her in the hallway, her lined face grave. "You burned deeper than you realize, child. The light takes as much as it gives." "I can handle it," Seren said, though her hands still shook. "You cannot pour from an empty vessel," Thessa warned. "Rest. He will live. You've done enough." But when night fell and the healers left, Seren crept back into Ryan's room anyway. The chamber was dim, lit only by the faint blue glow of the hearth. Ryan lay beneath heavy furs, his breathing even but shallow. A thin layer of frost shimmered faintly across his collarbone, the curse fighting to return. Seren sat beside him and reached for his hand. It was cold. Too cold. Without thinking, she pressed his palm between hers, closing her eyes. "Please," she whispered. "Not after everything." Her warmth sparked faintly, golden light flickering between their fingers. It wasn't the blazing fire of battle, but something softer, steady and alive. The frost retreated little by little, until his breathing deepened. "You shouldn't be here." His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. But it was him. Seren smiled through tears. You're awake. I told you, you never listen. Would you rather I had? She teased gently. Ryan opened his eyes, a faint smile ghosting his lips. Not once. She exhaled, the tension breaking. You scared me. You scare me more, he murmured. Seren blinked. What do you mean? He turned his hand, fingers brushing hers. Because every time you shine, I forget what darkness feels like. And I've lived in it a long time. Her heart skipped. Then don't go back. Ryan looked at her for a long, unreadable moment. Then, quietly, I don't think I could, even if I tried. The silence that followed felt different, heavy with something fragile and dangerous. For once, the King of Emberfall didn't look like a legend carved in ice. He looked like a man trying to remember what it meant to be human. Seren stayed beside him until dawn. The next morning, the council demanded an audience. The Citadel's grand hall was crowded, filled with nobles, soldiers, and elders. Murmurs rippled as Seren entered at Ryan's side. The king still looked pale, but his presence filled the room nonetheless. Elder Thessa stood near the throne, her expression unreadable. Councillor Verin, the eldest of the advisors, stepped forward. Your Majesty, the court rejoices at your return, but we must speak plainly. You brought the curse back with you. The frost spreads again. Ryan's gaze sharpened. The frost was never gone. Corrin's magic runs in my blood. It cannot be severed. Verin's eyes flicked toward Seren. Yet the girl seems untouched. She is protected by the Everbloom, Thessa said. Her light repels the frost. Or feeds it, Verin countered. What if her power strengthens the curse instead of breaking it? The crowd stirred. Seren's stomach twisted. That's not true. Can you prove it? Verin's voice echoed. Can you swear the storm doesn't answer to you? Before Ryan could speak, Seren stepped forward. I saved your king. I fought your rogues. What more proof do you need? Verin sneered. Power can save or destroy. The moon chooses both with equal cruelty. Ryan's voice cut through the noise like steel. Enough. You will not question her loyalty again. Majesty. Enough. The word reverberated across the hall, final and cold. Without her, Emberfall would be ash. If the council cannot see that, then perhaps I need a new council. The hall fell silent. Ryan turned to Seren. Come with me. Without another word, he left the chamber, his cloak trailing behind him like shadow. Seren followed, her pulse racing. He didn't stop until they reached the upper tower, a narrow balcony overlooking the mountains. The wind was sharp, biting at their faces. You didn't have to defend me, Seren said quietly. Yes, I did. You're the king. You shouldn't need to. He turned to her, eyes blazing. Do you think strength means standing alone? She didn't answer. I've spent years believing that, he said. That a king must be stone, unshakable, untouched. But then you walked out of the storm, and I realized I'd mistaken endurance for emptiness. His words stole her breath. Ryan. He took a step closer, his voice lower now, almost a whisper. You are not my curse, Seren Allery. You are what's keeping it at bay. Before she could speak, the wind shifted, cold, sudden, wrong. A dark shape moved across the horizon. Ryan's hand went instantly to his sword. Get back. The sky split open. A storm unlike any they had ever seen poured over the mountains, black clouds shot through with lightning the color of ice. The air trembled with power. Seren's blood went cold. His back. Ryan's voice was grim. No. He never left. Chapter 14, The Storm King's Return. The citadel descended into chaos. Within minutes, horns sounded across the walls, summoning every warrior in Emberfall. Snow and ash fell together, swirling in the wind like dying embers. Seren and Ryan raced down the tower steps, the echo of their boots drowned by the rising roar outside. Cassian met them in the main courtyard, armor half-fastened, his sword already drawn. The eastern watchfires are out, he shouted. The storm's moving faster than anything I've seen. Evacuate the outer wards, Ryan ordered. Bring the healers to the west hall. Seal the northern gate. Cassian nodded, then hesitated. And you? I'll hold the line. You can't fight that alone. I won't. Ryan looked at Seren. Not this time. They reached the battlements as the first blast of wind hit. The sky was nearly black now, shot through with streaks of pale lightning. Beneath it, figures moved, hundreds of them. Rogues, their fur rimed with ice, their eyes glowing faintly blue. Seren's breath caught. How many? All of them, Ryan said grimly. Every wolf Koren ever twisted. The ground shook. The frost spread up the walls like living veins. Cashan's voice rang out over the wind. Archers. Ready. The first volley of arrows streaked through the sky, burning shafts that vanished into the storm. Dozens of rogues fell, but twice as many surged forward. Ryan unsheathed his sword, its blade gleaming faintly silver. Stay behind me, he said. Seren's hands glowed instinctively. No. I'm with you. He gave a short, fierce nod. Then together. They met the storm head-on. The first wave of rogues crashed against the gates. The impact sounded like thunder. Soldiers shouted, steel clashed, and magic burned through the air. Seren lifted her hands, sending bursts of golden light across the battlefield. Each pulse drove the frost back, turning snow to steam. The warmth that had once frightened her now poured from her like breath itself. Beside her, Ryan fought like a living storm, fast, precise, unstoppable. Every strike of his blade sent shards of ice scattering. But for every enemy that fell, another took its place. Then the ground split. A figure rose from the rift, taller than before, wreathed in dark wind and frost. Koren's voice boomed across the field. You can't kill what was never alive. Ryan's eyes blazed. Then I'll end what you became. Koren smiled, raising a hand. The storm obeyed. Lightning struck the wall, hurling Cassian backward. Soldiers screamed as ice erupted under their feet. Seren reached for Ryan's arm. We can't fight him with steel. He's made of the curse. Then how? He demanded. Through me, she said. Through the Everbloom. He hesitated. It could kill you. It will kill us both if we don't try. Their eyes met. For a heartbeat, the world fell away, just him, her, and the wind between them. Then do it, he said. Seren stepped forward, closing her eyes. She reached deep into herself, past fear, past pain, into the warmth that had always lived quietly beneath her ribs. The light answered instantly, roaring to life. Golden fire bloomed from her skin, brighter and hotter than before. The snow around her melted in a perfect circle. Koren hissed. You think you can burn the winter? Seren's voice rang out clear and steady. No. I'll end it. She thrust her hands toward the sky. The light shot upward, piercing the storm clouds. The blackness shuddered, cracks of gold racing through the dark. The rogues froze mid-charge, their eyes turning from blue to white. Ryan stepped beside her, placing his hand over hers. His frost met her fire, and for the first time, neither destroyed the other. They merged, swirling together into something new, silver flame. It surged outward, a wave of light and ice, sweeping across the battlefield. The rogues screamed as they disintegrated into dust. The storm shattered like glass. When the light faded, silence fell. Snow drifted gently once more, soft and clean. Ryan stood motionless, his sword half raised. Then he turned to Seren. She swayed, pale and shaking, her light dimming. He caught her before she could fall. Easy, he whispered. It's over. Her voice was faint. Did we win? He looked out over the battlefield, nothing but stillness and moonlight. Yes. Good, she murmured, a tired smile curving her lips. Then I can rest. Not yet, he said softly. Stay with me. But her eyes were already closing. Ryan held her against him as the night settled around them, the snow falling gently onto her hair. For the first time in years, the air was warm. And far above the mountains, the moon shone brighter than it ever had before. Chapter 15, The Light That Sleeps. The battlefield was silent now, blanketed in soft snow. The storm was gone, its roar replaced by still air and the quiet drip of melting frost from the shattered walls. The people of Emberfall would later call it the night the moon breathed fire. But in that first fragile dawn, there was no celebration. Only the sound of a king's heartbeat as he knelt in the snow, holding the girl who had saved his kingdom. Seren lay motionless in Ryan's arms. Her hair, once silver-white, glowed faintly gold where the light had touched it. Her skin was warm but unnaturally still. Her pulse fluttered weakly beneath his fingers, there, then gone, then there again. Cassian stumbled toward them, limping and blooded, his armor cracked. "She did it," he rasped. "The storm's gone." Ryan didn't look up. "She gave too much." Cassian's gaze dropped to Seren's still face. "Then we have to bring her back." Ryan shook his head. "There's nothing to bring back. She's here, just, somewhere between." He could feel it, her light still burning, but buried deep, as if the Everbloom itself had folded inward to protect her. "Help me carry her," he said quietly. Cassian obeyed without question. Together, they lifted her from the snow and began the long walk back to Emberfall. The citadel was half in ruin when they returned. The outer walls had collapsed under the storm's weight, and the once silver towers were streaked with black ice. But the people cheered anyway. They saw the returning king, his sword still gleaming, and the unconscious girl in his arms. To them, it was enough. Ryan didn't stop to speak. He carried Seren straight through the hall, past the bowing guards, past the whispering courtiers, until he reached the high tower, the chamber that faced the moon. He laid her gently upon the bed, brushing the snow from her hair. Elder Thessa arrived soon after, eyes sharp but kind. She placed a hand on Seren's forehead, closing her eyes as she murmured old words the king didn't understand. "Well?" Ryan demanded, voice breaking through the silence. Thessa exhaled slowly. "She's alive. But her light sleeps. The Everbloom burned too fiercely, it's protecting her by retreating inward." "How do I wake her?" Thessa looked at him sadly. "You don't. Only she can. When the moon calls again, she'll rise." Ryan's hands curled into fists. "And if it never calls? Then she'll remain as she is, half here, half within the light." Cassian leaned against the doorway, voice hoarse. "You should rest too, my king. You're barely standing." "I'll rest when she opens her eyes." Thessa touched his shoulder gently. "You cannot fight what is not an enemy, Ryan. This is not a curse. It is a choice. She chose to save you, and all of us." He didn't answer. His jaw was set, eyes fixed on Seren's sleeping face. When the healer left, the tower fell silent again. The fire burned low. Ryan sat beside her, watching the faint rise and fall of her chest. "You said once you don't take orders well," he whispered. "So why listen now?" The only answer was the whisper of snow against the window. Days turned to weeks. The people rebuilt. The walls were reforged, the banners replaced. Emberfall lived again. But its king grew quieter. Each night, he climbed the tower, bringing reports, food, anything to fill the silence. He read aloud to her sometimes old stories of wolves and goddesses, of moonlight and destiny. And though she never stirred, he swore her fingers twitched when he said her name. "Seren," he would murmur softly, tracing the edge of her hand. "The light that burns, the one who never stopped walking through the snow." He refused to let her become legend. To him, she was still a girl who laughed in defiance, who fought with trembling hands, who had turned his darkness to dawn. One night, as he sat watching the moon through the tower's window, a strange sound filled the air. A faint hum. Low and steady. He turned sharply toward her. Light, soft and silver, was beginning to pulse beneath Seren's skin. It started at her chest and spread outward, gentle as breath. Her lips parted slightly, and a small exhale escaped. Ryan rose to his feet, hope and fear colliding. "Seren." The glow faded. Her eyes stayed closed. He sank back down, pressing his forehead to her hand. "Come back to me," he whispered. "Once more. That's all I ask." But the room was silent again. Still, he stayed. He would wait as long as it took. Far beyond Emberfall, deep in the frozen mountains, something stirred. A shadow moved through the wreckage of ice where Koren had fallen. A shape formed from frost and rage. "She burns bright," the voice hissed. "But even light must fade." And as the darkness gathered once more, the snow began to fall again. Chapter 16. When the moon rises again. The thaw came early that year. By the 3rd month after the storm, spring crept quietly through the valley. The ice melted from the rivers. The forests whispered with new leaves. But in the high tower, the king kept vigil. Ryan rarely left her side now. His council begged him to resume court meetings, to name heirs, to plan for the future, but he ignored them all. His future was lying motionless before him. Cassian tried once to reason with him. "You can't lead like this, Ryan. The people need you." Ryan didn't look away from Seren. "The people have the walls. The healers. The council. They don't need me half as much as she does." "She'd tell you otherwise," Cassian said quietly. "She didn't save you to see you die beside her." Ryan's eyes flicked toward the window. "Then she shouldn't have left me." Cassian sighed. "She didn't leave. She's fighting her way back. The moon's just giving her time." Ryan didn't answer. That night, something changed. The moon rose full and bright over the citadel, larger than Ryan had ever seen it. Its light poured through the tower window, covering Seren in silver. For the first time in weeks, her chest rose sharply and she gasped. Ryan was on his feet in an instant. "Seren." Her eyes opened slowly. Not the pale grey they once were, but molten gold shot through with silver. Light shimmered in her irises like living flame. She blinked, dazed. "Ryan." He exhaled a sound that was half a laugh, half a sob. "You're back." Her voice was rough. "How long?" 3 months, he said softly. 3 endless months. She looked around, confusion fading into understanding. "The storm?" "Gone," he said. "You ended it." She smiled faintly. "We ended it." Ryan reached out, brushing his thumb gently across her cheek. "You've been asleep since. I thought I'd lost you." "You don't lose what's bound to you," she murmured. His hand stilled. "Bound?" "The light," she said, touching her chest. "It's part of you now too. When our powers joined, they became one. The frost and the flame balanced." He frowned. "Then why are you awake now?" "Because something's coming," she said, her expression turning distant. "I can feel it. The darkness isn't gone, it's changing." Ryan stiffened. "Koren?" "No. Something older." Before he could question further, a soft knock came at the door. Cassian entered, eyes wide. "The rivers are freezing again, my king. It's spring, but the frost is spreading from the north border." Ryan turned to Seren. "You were right." She swung her legs over the side of the bed, wincing as her bare feet touched the cold floor. "Then we have no time to waste." "You can't fight yet," Ryan said sharply. She looked up at him, smiling faintly. "You taught me to stand even when I fall. Remember?" He hesitated, then sighed. "You'll be the death of me." "Maybe," she said. "But not today." By morning, the citadel was awake with movement. Word spread quickly. The king's Luna had risen. The light had returned. Seren dressed in armor of pale silver leather, her hair braided back. A new energy hummed beneath her skin, steady, controlled, no longer wild. As she walked through the halls, people knelt in silence. Not in fear this time, but reverence. Ryan joined her at the gates, his black armor gleaming under the sun. The frost spreading from the north could already be seen from the walls, a shimmering wave of pale mist crawling across the horizon. Cassian approached, bowing low. "Scouts say the ice moves like it's alive. Whatever's coming, it isn't human." Seren closed her eyes, reaching out with her senses. The air hummed faintly, vibrating through her bones. When she opened her eyes again, they burned with golden light. "It's not Koren," she said quietly. "It's what created him." "The origin," Ryan said grimly. "The first curse." He turned to his soldiers. "Ready the guard. We ride at dusk." Cassian blinked. "To the mountains again. After everything." "This time we end it," Ryan said. Seren stepped beside him. Together. Their hands brushed briefly, a spark of warmth passing between them, fire meeting frost, neither yielding. As dusk fell, they rode north once more, the howling wind carrying the scent of snow and old magic. Behind them, Emberfall's towers glowed with golden light, the fires burning high against the dark. Ahead, the mountains waited, silent and cold. And somewhere in that vast, frozen distance, the ancient voice that had cursed them all whispered softly, "Let the storm begin again." Chapter 17, The Frozen Crown. The journey north was silent, the air colder than any winter before. The further they rode, the more the world seemed to fade into shades of white and grey. Trees were buried beneath layers of frost so thick they looked like stone. The rivers, once thawed by spring, had turned to mirrors of ice that cracked under the horses' hooves. By the second day, even the air began to shimmer, thin, sharp, and wrong. The world itself was holding its breath. Ryan led from the front, his black cloak whipping behind him, frost curling in the air where he passed. Cassian and the Ember Guard followed in tight formation. Seren rode beside the king, her light glowing faintly beneath her gloves. She no longer trembled when it rose. The power now moved with purpose, no longer wild, no longer afraid. But the closer they drew to the mountains, the more that purpose began to twist. The light inside her flickered uneasily, as if something unseen was calling to it. When they reached the edge of the frost plains, the place where the snow turned blue beneath the moonlight, Ryan slowed his horse. "Here," he said quietly. "This is where it began." Seren dismounted. The ground was cracked and frozen, black veins of ice threading through the snow. In the distance, a spire of crystal jutted from the ground, tall, thin, impossibly smooth. Cassian frowned. "That wasn't here before." "It's growing," Seren murmured. "Like the frost itself." Ryan approached the spire cautiously. The Frostbane's heart. As they drew closer, the air turned bitterly cold. Their breath froze midair, hanging like mist. The spire pulsed faintly, and from within its depths came a soft, rhythmic sound like a heartbeat trapped in stone. Seren's skin prickled. "It's alive." "Not alive," Ryan said grimly. "Awake." The ground shook. Cracks split the snow, spreading outward in jagged lines. The spire blazed with light, and from its center poured a figure, a shadow of pure ice, crowned with jagged shards, eyes like dead stars. The voice that followed was deep and hollow. "Children of frost and fire," it said. "You've come to claim what was never yours." Ryan drew his sword, silver steel gleaming against the darkness. "Name yourself." The shadow smiled. "I am what you call curse. The first cold, the breath before the world knew warmth." "The Frostbane," Seren whispered. It turned its gaze on her. "You burn bright, little flame. Too bright. Do you know what happens to light when there is no darkness left for it to fight? It becomes something stronger," she said. The ground trembled violently. Ice erupted upward, forming a jagged throne around the spire. The Frostbane rose higher, towering above them all. Ryan's voice was steady. "You've haunted my blood long enough. It ends tonight." The Frostbane laughed, the sound echoing across the valley. "Foolish king. You are mine. You always were. Every drop of your blood carries my mark. Every breath you take feeds my winter." Ryan's grip tightened on his sword. "Then I'll spill every drop if it means ending you." He lunged. The steel met the creature's arm, shattering against ice that refused to break. Frost exploded outward, hurling him backward. "Ryan!" Seren cried, running to him. The cold burned her skin where it touched. She pulled him up, her light flickering frantically. "You can't fight him with steel," she said. "He's not flesh." "Then what?" Her eyes glowed brighter. "With what made him, power against power. Fire against frost." He shook his head. "If you try that again, you'll die." She looked at him fiercely. "Then I'll take him with me." Before he could stop her, Seren stepped forward. Her palms burned with gold. The light poured from her skin, melting the snow beneath her feet. The Frostbane's voice deepened. "You think your flame can destroy me? I forged the first dawn. Then you know how it ends," Seren said. She raised her hands. The light surged, forming a sphere around her, bright enough to make the shadows retreat. The frost hissed and cracked, steam rising where her warmth touched it. But the creature's cold pressed harder. The light flickered, bending under its weight. Ryan staggered to his feet, shouting over the storm, "Seren!" She didn't turn. Her voice rang through the chaos, "If I fall, don't stop fighting. Seren, no." The Frostbane roared, striking forward with a wave of pure ice. The force shattered the ground. Seren screamed as the cold tore through her defenses, the light dimming. Ryan ran toward her, his own magic surging, frost spilling from his veins in blue fire. He caught her as she stumbled, pulling her close. "You're not doing this alone," he said. The Frostbane's laughter shook the air. "Then die together." Ryan pressed his forehead to hers. "Trust me. I always have," she whispered. He closed his eyes and let go. The frost inside him, the curse that had poisoned his heart for years, surged outward. Seren's light met it, merging in a violent burst of silver flame. Together they rose, the two forces spiraling upward, twisting around each other until the line between them vanished. The Frostbane's scream echoed across the plains as the light engulfed it. For one endless heartbeat, the world turned white. And then everything shattered. When the light faded, the spire was gone. The throne of ice had melted into nothing but mist. The valley was quiet again, still and clean. Cassian stumbled through the melting snow, calling out, "My king, Seren." He found them lying at the center of a shallow crater, half buried in frost and ash. Ryan was on his back, eyes closed, his sword still clutched loosely in his hand. Seren lay beside him, her head resting against his shoulder. Cassian's voice broke. "No, not both." Then Ryan stirred. He coughed, the sound raw, painful but alive. Cassian fell to his knees in relief. "You stubborn wolf." Ryan turned weakly, his hand finding Seren's. "She's cold." Cassian checked, then hesitated. "Her pulse, faint. But it's there." Ryan exhaled, a sound half sob, half prayer. Then the light chose mercy. They carried her back under the rising dawn, the snow melting behind them as they walked. Chapter 18, The Dawn of Emberfall. Weeks passed before Seren woke. The first thing she felt was warmth, not her own, but steady and constant. She opened her eyes to find sunlight streaming through the tower window. The frost that had once clung to every stone was gone. The air smelled of pine and new grass. Ryan sat beside her, head bowed, asleep in his chair. His armor had been replaced with plain black linen, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked at peace. Seren smiled faintly. "You look terrible." His head jerked up. His words broke into laughter, shaky and unrestrained. "You're awake." "Seems so." He leaned forward, taking her hand carefully. "You slept longer this time." "Did we win?" she asked. He nodded. "The Frostbane is gone. For good. The ice melted from the rivers. The land is ours again." She exhaled slowly. "And you?" He hesitated, then smiled. "The frost inside me died with him. Whatever curse he left ended when you saved me." "Again," she teased weakly. "Again," he agreed, his thumb brushing over her fingers. They sat in silence for a long while, the quiet filled only by the soft hum of the world healing itself outside. Finally, Seren said, "What happens now?" Ryan looked out the window at the city below. "The people rebuild. The north breathes again. And the moon gains two very tired, very stubborn guardians." She laughed softly. "Guardians? You burned away a curse older than history," he said. "You think I'm letting you go back to being a lone Omega?" Her smile faded, replaced by something softer. "You're serious." "As serious as I've ever been." He reached for something beside him, a circlet of silver, simple and elegant, shaped like a crescent moon. "When I first found you," he said quietly, "you were kneeling in the snow, alone. Now the world kneels for you. The council has already spoken. They call you the Dawn of Emberfall." Seren blinked, tears stinging her eyes. "I never wanted a crown." "Then wear it as a reminder," he said, placing it gently in her lap. "That light doesn't always need thrones. Sometimes it just needs to be seen." She looked at him for a long time, the weight of everything they'd survived settling between them. "And what about you, Ryan? What do you want?" He smiled faintly. "You." The word was quiet, but it filled the room completely. Seren's heart caught. You're terrible at courtly speeches. Then I'll stop talking. He leaned forward and kissed her. It was soft, hesitant at first, then sure, the kind of kiss that felt like sunrise after a lifetime of winter. When they parted, she whispered, "The storm's really over. For now," he said. "But if it ever returns, it will find us ready." A month later, the citadel bells rang again. Not for war this time, but for celebration. The courtyard was filled with banners of gold and white. Flowers bloomed along the frost walls. The people of Emberfall gathered to witness what no story had ever told before, the crowning of a Luna not born to power, but chosen by destiny. Seren stood at Ryan's side, her silver circlet glinting under the sun. Cassian grinned from the front row, his armor polished to blinding shine. Elder Thessa wept quietly behind him. Ryan took Seren's hand and raised it before the crowd. "Once, this kingdom was bound by fear," he said. "Now it stands in light." The people roared in approval. Seren smiled, her voice clear and steady. "The moon teaches that rejection is not the end, it is the redirection toward who we are meant to be. I was once cast out, unwanted. But the frost taught me warmth, and the storm taught me strength." Her gaze swept across the crowd. "Let every outcast, every broken soul, know this. Light can bloom anywhere." The cheers rose louder, echoing through the mountains. Ryan turned to her, pride shining in his eyes. "You've always had a gift for speeches." She laughed. "And you for storms." "Then together," he said, "we'll keep the balance." As the sun set behind the mountains, the first stars appeared, bright and cold. The wind carried the sound of the people's song up to the tower walls, a melody of hope and rebirth. And in that moment, under the silver light of the moon, Seren Allery, the girl who had once been a rejected Omega, became the queen of a kingdom reborn. The frost would return someday. It always did. But so would the dawn. If this story stirred something in you, don't let it fade with the credits. Hit that subscribe button, light up the notification bell, and join me as we dive into the next world of wolves, power, and destiny. Your next favorite story starts right here.